politicians. I see you in them high-class houses, but down the road a young man feeling like life is worthless. I mean, where the hell from you? Are you scratching the surface? Let them know that the life, there's a purpose. Once you're like a service, putting blood in your hands, you're worthless. Seeing these curses, can you hear the pain in these verses be reoccurring? Sad to know that this is lurking. You know what, let's get to working. I know how you feel, we got the raw deal. You know the economy's growing, can't feed the family, we need to feel like a sympathy from a persona that can't relate to deal with the struggles. Y'all get expenses paid, never not half to eat a meal. Do you see a society in crisis? This COVID got you blinded. Do you overshadow suicide? We can't be like this, because life's priceless. And all shapes and forms, you know life's priceless. Yeah, life's priceless. Life goes on, but with the radio on, take a minute to mourn all the pain in the past, the lingering on. Anxiety got us Papa Brothers show, we gotta move on. Carry this pain on, because days do get better. And life will only get better if you get a chance to pull it together. So let's pull it together. And I can't stop thinking, what if we could combine instead of hate and division? Just because walls built up don't mean we gotta be any different. Just a society created by politicians causing division. How different life would be if this wasn't the way we really live. You gotta listen, you learn it from the way you come across and interpret. Are we weak-minded, not the pain and the troubles we inherit? And because you see it's so worthless, you got the nerve to call us a burden. Hope you take all of these words and now you swerve it, try to curb it. Makes we're masks for a flu that is lurking. Social distance keep us apart, divide and conquer and burn. No wonder we feeling so helpless with the way that this is turning. And my stomach is turning. We've had traumatic and sad static and felt pain and a panic. It's caused the life to feel tragic. Do the mathematics. It's a cause for concern over islands registered in these graphics, showing the world our future ain't happy. And to say this sadly, no change in environment with a pandemic happening and the support lacking. Do right by the people, but instead you choose to sit and watch this happen. We can talk about this topic because I'm wanting to drop it. Ain't no stopping these feelings when you cage us up with these lockings. We just longing for some help. If there's a topic y'all seem to be dropping. Good to see my life ain't worth nothing. And these times get harder in different days. It ain't gonna feel like yesterday. I know. But brother, let it go, let it go, let it go. Cause when these times get harder in different ways, it makes you stronger than other days. I know. So brother, let it go, let it go, let it go. So let it go. Aim for the stars, raising the bars. Don't let nobody break you apart. You know what? I told you this from the very start. I can't stop thinking. And I can't stop thinking, what if we could combine instead of hate and division? Just because walls built up don't mean we gotta be any different. Just a society created by politicians causing division. How different life would be if this wasn't the way we really live. And I can't stop thinking, what if we could combine instead of hate and division? No hate and division. Just because walls built up don't mean we gotta be any different. Any different, no. Just a society created by politicians causing division. All them causing division. How different life would be if this wasn't the way we really live. The way we live.
Hello and welcome to another evening at Restore UK Live, and that's Restore UK going out to the Restore UK platform, that's on Facebook, to the British Unionist People's Voice, also on Facebook, to the YouTube channel, that's Restore UK, and also to Restore UK on Twitter. So if you aren't following us on any of those platforms, be that Twitter, the YouTube channel, the British Unionist People's Voice, I would like to urge those that are on our screen to go across to give us a like, to subscribe to your channel, and also to share the broadcast. So to the people that's here, and I have to say the numbers of that they're going up fairly well this evening. To the people that's here, I would like to ask you in what we normally ask for. Could you share this platform to people? Could you also, if you would like to tag people into the live chat, and from there, what happens is that if you tag people, people then are notified that we're live. And also, if you're new to the channel, what I would like to ask you to do is that if you could give us a like, if you could give us a love, if you could give us a share, if you could make it known that you're here by putting a comment into the live chat. That way, what we can do is that we get to identify you and we can invite you to your channel. And that way you'll see broadcasts as they happen in the future. So just looking across into the Twitter channel, if anyone's on Twitter, if they would like to go across and if they would like to share that out, there are viewers on the Twitter channel, but I have to say it's not so fruitful at the minute, and would like to try to make use of Twitter to bring people to the platform. So this evening, we have entitled this screen, People Have Had Enough with Self-Serving Politicians. Now, what do I mean whenever I say that people have had enough of self-serving politicians? You know, if you look across our society, the broken society is what I would like to call it. I mean, you can't help but think if there were politicians that were worth their salt, if there were politicians that were doing the job that we elected them to do, that is to serve and to protect us and to defend and protect and enhance our best interests, and particularly for us here in Northern Ireland, for people in Scotland, for people in England, for people in Wales who love the United Kingdom, well, we would expect that those politicians would also protect the United Kingdom, and yet they don't seem to be doing their job. They seem to be everything that they seem to do is they seem to like talk as if they're going to do the right thing, and then they don't. And progressively, and I use that term quote unquote progressively, we end up in a worse position that we were before. And that's all because the people that are meant to be serving and protecting you, I, and others right around this United Kingdom, well, they're failing, and they're failing in their efforts miserably. So what we're here to try to do is we're here to try to talk to, we've got a couple of guests here from Scotland this evening, and we want to really scratch the surface in Scotland, and we want to compare notes from Northern Ireland to Scotland, and we want to try to understand, are the politicians in Scotland the same as the politicians here in Northern Ireland that are meant to be in place to serve and protect the best interests of every single person that lives in the United Kingdom, and by extension, that is maintaining the United Kingdom to the best of their ability. So before that I move on, what I want to do is I want to actually show a little something that I seen today as I was driving along Annandale Embankment. Now, I had to go and I had to stop and I had to take a picture of a billboard which has appeared over the last few days. Now, I'm saying the last few days, I certainly have noticed it in the past few days. And I want to pop this billboard up. And this links fairly well to the subject that we're here to discuss on Restore UK this evening. You know, there's the subject being people have had enough with self-serving politicians. Now, I want to show this billboard, and I'm asking the people that's in the guest room here to also have a look at this billboard, because this is the topic that we want to start off by discussing here on Restore UK this evening. So here we go with the billboard, and that's before that we play a short video clip, and then we'll be bringing in the two guests that we have here from Scotland, no stranger to Restore UK, or no strangers, should I say, to Restore UK. But here we go with the billboard. Now, I want people to focus on what it is that it says within this billboard. It says, "Hey, straight white men, pass the power. Hey, straight, white men pass the power with a huge exclamation mark. Now we could speculate as to what that means. You know, if that had have appeared out of the blue, and if we hadn't have been hearing particular things in our media, you know, right across the Western world, if we hadn't have been hearing those things in our media, well, you know, this would be, you know, a head scratcher. You'd be looking at that and you'd be wondering, what does this mean? What does this mean? Well, we're not going to speculate as to what it means. We just want people to register in your mind's eye that particular billboard, and then we're going to discuss it whenever that we introduce our guests. So again, one other thing that I want to do before that we move on is that I want to play a very, very short video clip, which is linked to the billboard, which you would see on your screen right now. Now, let me just remove that for one moment. And then we're going to look for a little video clip. Now, this video clip is hugely linked to that billboard. And I'm going to ask people to, well, once you hear this video, and once you hear the content of this video, I want you to compare in your own mind's eye the linkage that this video clip would have with that particular billboard.
In this constituency, I remember her standing up and saying steal, meal, peel, and that's what this constituency has had since 1998. With power comes responsibility, and people now need to take their responsibility seriously. In this constituency, I remember her standing up and saying steal, meal, peel, and that's what this constituency has had since 1998.
So there we go. Firstly, we showed you a billboard. Hey, white male, hand over the power. Hand over the power. Was it hey, white, straight male, hand over the power? And then we heard the Justice Minister of Northern Ireland having a go at someone who represented the community in up around the North Coast, Mervyn Story from the Ballymoney area, a DUP councillor. And, you know, what was Naomi Long calling this man who had give up his time to serve and protect the community over the years? And Mervyn Story gets a very, very good name in that area from the constituents in the specifically the Ballymoney area where his office is. And here we have a justice minister. And I just comprehend what you just heard there. Here we have a justice minister referring to Mervyn Story as steal. Steal. Steal, well, we could say that it is, you know, something that has passed its sell-by date. Steal. Ageism is exactly what she was, that's the crime that she was committing whenever she was calling Mervyn Story steal. Then he was male. So that's sexism, when referring to a man who represented the community over the years. And then pale. Well, what does pale mean? Pale means that he's not black, that he's too white. Hey, white, straight male, hand over the power. And that's the Justice Minister of Northern Ireland, openly promoting ageism, sexism, racism, and, well, the opposite of misogyny is a thing called misandry. And that also is what that Justice Minister was advocating. Now, the question for the people of Northern Ireland is, the question for the political leaders in Northern Ireland is, are they, if they set up the Northern Ireland Assembly again, will they be turning a blind eye to that thing, Naomi Long? Will they turn a blind eye and permit that to be the Justice Minister? A Justice Minister who is racist, who is ageist, who is sexist, and who, well, she is the purveyor of misandry. So without any further ado, what I would like to do is I would like to invite our guests on screen. So here we go. And here we go. So I'll just go around the screen that way. It's hard to get your hands right. And we'll start off with Peter. Peter, what I want you to do is I want you to give yourself a brief. And Peter, I'm going to ask you also, whenever you close each time, if you mute yourself, and before you speak, you're going to unmute yourself and say to yourself. Go ahead, Peter. Over to you.
Hi. Pete Morris used to live over in Northern Ireland for 18 years, returned back home to Scotland and look after my kids. And I agree with every word you said about that video and that poster, John. If you changed one word from white to black, it would be, there'd be an outcry that billboard wouldn't be allowed to be up. But yes, she has to be held to account for what she's done. It is a crime, what she said.
And over to you now, David. If you just unmute yourself and then mute yourself again whenever that you finish.
Hi everyone, I'm David Griffiths. I am a former Holyrood candidate for the All for Unity Party from last year. Some of you may remember I hosted a show on here, which I hope to do again very soon, giving a Scottish angle on the fight to restore and retain the UK. My view of Naomi Long is much as it's always been. I am not a fan at all. Since she and I interacted on Twitter, she took no time at all to block me. I don't agree with her. I don't agree with her appeasement policy towards nationalists. She's not my type of person in any stretch at all. And I think it's just lazy cliches to say, oh, look, they're all old white men. I mean, so what? You could say you're an obese female. So I wouldn't know, because it's insulting and it's not in any way indicative of any of your abilities. So why mention it? It's just it's a ridiculous statement, and I couldn't take any. I wouldn't even entertain a discussion with somebody who uses that sort of nonsense. It's just completely. It's a fake point she's making, a non-point. So I detest that type of nonsense.
David, thank you very much for that. So we can rightfully assess that this screen this evening, according to Naomi Long, is being occupied by steel, male, and pale individuals. Yep. And, you know, that strikes to the heart of a particular debate, because if we were to say, for example, as you say, we were to point out exactly what we see to Naomi Long or any of Naomi Long's associates, well, the first port of call for those people would be the PSNI or the policing service in Scotland, whatever it is that they call it, whenever you're over there. And just a quick question for you, David, first, and then we'll move on to Peter. But I mean, is that your experience in Scotland? Are they the same type of people over there? And are they good at giving it out, but maybe not so good at taking it back?
I would say so. I mean, you do get these cliches. Quite often you see this allegation that it's only males who are in positions, and quite over here the big thing also is if it's only Protestants who are in positions of seniority. You used to hear that an awful lot. Maybe not so much now. I don't think Scotland's got it quite as bad as possibly London, for example. I saw something. Forgive me for saying this, but I saw something. It was a meme, and it was a photo of some of the presenters at the Commonwealth Games in the BBC studio, and there were 4 people. And one, I won't say who they were, but if I just describe it, the comment was, if you went out for dinner, would you expect to see a lesbian, a dwarf, a black woman, and a black man sitting together? No? Well, why does the BBC think that's representative of the viewing public? Because that's what these people were. And you just think, they've got a point, They're taking this diversity a little too far, are they not? I mean, I'm all for diversity, genuinely. If someone's good enough and is talented, they should get the job 100%, or they should be elected 100%. What I can't agree with, however, is positive vetting, because I think that effectively is a favouritism in its own right. And you hear this a lot in England. There's an awful lot of talk about, forgive me again from going down this path, but why are there no black football managers? I have no idea. But there are certainly thousands of black footballers, so I can't believe there's racism in the game. It can't be it, guys. It can't be. So I find it tiresome on a personal level. I know I'm probably being politically incorrect here. This isn't stuff I would say on the podcast in which I appear in Scotland. But really, I mean, aren't we taking this a little bit too far? Isn't there any meritocracy left? Is it all got to be about diversity first and foremost? If so, I think that's it's going to be at the expense of excellence, and that can't be right, surely.
Indeed, David. And Peter, again, for you, what we're going to do is that we're going to go back to where we started here. And I look, I'm going to try to get you to explain what it is that you see on there. Give us your rationale in terms of what it is that you think that this billboard actually means. Over to you,
If you look at the context and exactly what that reads, it would read that every black man is gay and every white female is gay, because we're only asking straight white men to pass the power. So is every white man straight and every other person, including females, are gay? That's what the logic I take for that poster.
I'm laughing, Peter, but well done. Well done. I have to say that. I wasn't expecting that, but yeah. And over to you, David. David, I just want you to just have a look at that billboard there and let's see, can you give it a go?
Right, okay. What you're seeing there is, as I really mentioned earlier, it's lazy stereotyping. It's saying, hang on, the guy who had this held this position before falls into this category, and the guy before him the same. Therefore, there's a power imbalance. Therefore, you must pass it over. So with no more guys of a certain age, no more males. And why does it have to be someone who's heterosexual? Well, my answer to that is, sorry, why shouldn't it be? Shouldn't it just be the most outstanding candidate who uses his charm and his persuasion to attain the most votes? Wouldn't that make sense, rather than categorizing everybody into these pretty much false pigeonholes? So I just see that as desperation, really. That's what I see it as, and I just think it's just ludicrous. It's just, I find it laughable, in fact.
Yeah, and something I personally want to do, and I was talking to a man about it today whenever I seen that billboard, is that we're going to start a GoFundMe, and we're going to find out how much these billboards are, and we're going to counteract what it is that we just see there. And we'll do it in a nice way. So watch this space in Northern Ireland for some billboards of our very own design, and we'll do that as the days, weeks, and months actually push by. So we're here to talk about Scotland this evening. We're here to compare notes in terms of what is happening in Northern Ireland, what is happening in England and Wales, what is happening right around the Western world. And we're trying to understand, can we compare? I mean, are they all been driven by the same people? Have they teamed together right across the Western world in order to derail the successes of those that love their history, their heritage, their culture, their country, the flag under which they stand? To those that are no fans of globalization, I mean, have the opposite of that? Have the people with globalization in mind, have they teamed together right around the Western world in order to derail our successes? So starting off with you, Peter, I just want to ask you, I mean, is that your experience in Scotland? Is it the opposite of those that love the United Kingdom that would be standing against you right now in Scotland?
Yeah, well, I've noticed over the past few months a certain type of unionism. That would be people who are members of the loyal orders here. Were never mentioned by our so-called pro-UK politicians, but yet we sit and watch them on the Twitter feeds sending congratulations to every other cultural event apart from ours. And when you challenge them as to why, as soon as we put an orange collarette on our apprentice boys collarette, they want nothing to do with us, they can't give you an answer. So yeah, you know, if you're a normal person who's not involved in any loyal orders, they'll speak to you. But as soon as you wear one of those loyal order collarettes, they want nothing to do with you, but they'll take your vote.
And over to you, David, if you would just like to give us your experience of, let's just say, is it globalization versus those that want to remain, I'm going to say nationalistic, and I know that's the bad term whenever you put it in the Scotland context, but, nationalistic meaning that we are the United Kingdom and we're pretty patriotic. And what we want to do is that we want to stand up for our national identity, our birthright, and the very fact that we were born, and we want to remain British. Over to you, Dave, if you just like to give us your thoughts on that.
And I see very much a move away from people, if you like, celebrating their sense of Britishness. And this word nationalist is very emotive, if you like, because in this country, in Scotland particularly, you see Scottish nationalists and the Greens, who, as I've said on the show, just to remind you, the Scottish Greens are not affiliated with the UK Greens at all, are about to cut ties altogether. In fact, the UK Greens are, I think, about to cut ties, or at least talking about cutting ties formally with the Scottish Greens. The Scottish Greens are not green at all. They pretend to be in order to gain the system, in order to try and get more nationalists elected to Holyrood. That's the whole purpose of their existence. So it is, because of the vagaries of the Scottish election system, it's 16 times more easy to elect a Green MSP via the list than it is an SNP MSP via the list. That means with a quarter of the votes, they got 4 times as many MSPs via the regional list in the last Holyrood election. So it's very clearly a scam. That's what it is. Now, those guys are all for globalization and all the rest of it. Now, the term that these people use most often to dismiss guys like Pete and me is either an ultra-unionist or a British nationalist. That's what they call us, British nationalists. So it's quite telling that the people who actually are nationalists, the pejorative term they use to try to be most dismissive and most hurtful, I guess, as they see it, is calling us what they actually are themselves, which is classic, Saul Alinsky tactics. Accuse your opponent of what you're actually doing yourself. So, we can see through this. But this is in the press every day. You get respectable broadsheet journalists referring to people like me and Pete as British nationalists, unashamedly so. So yes, I mean, there is a move away from this sense of Britishness. We've talked about this on the show many times. What do I want to see restored? I want to see this sense of Britishness restored and celebrating being British. I want to see that all over the United Kingdom. And at the moment, if you are seen to be if in any way backing the UK and speaking out against those who seek to break up the UK, which is what Scottish nationalism is. Scottish nationalism is trying to get a region of the United Kingdom broken apart. That's what it is. It's not independence. It's choosing a region of the UK and saying, we want to break away. That's what it is. That's nationalism. It's nationalism because everything they say, all of their entire reason for being is out of a sense of grievance and, if you like, dislike, irrational dislike and resentment of wealthy English people, if you like, represented by those in Westminster, particularly Conservatives. So that is what you've got here. So the bizarre thing is these nationalists, these Scottish nationalists, they want to jump straight out of the UK and into a far more restrictive trading bloc union. That's what they want to do. So it's not independence by any means. And of course, there's no more pro-globalization entity than the EU. So yeah, I do see that. That there are many. I think the last 5 candidates in the Conservative Party leadership election were all WEF members. So yeah, it's not a coincidence, is it? There's certainly something going on there. So we are seeing this all the time. We're seeing a drift away from a sense of British identity and a sense of this national shared values, and towards no, we must all be part of this this movement which is, let's get away from the old ways and let's get into Europe. That's where our future is. Utter nonsense, complete nonsense. So no, I'm very resistant to it. But yes, I do identify it very much, John. Yeah.
And just one more for you, Peter, or sorry, David, before that we close there.
Yep.
And do you think, whenever we talk about that, hey, straight white male and, steel male and pale and all the things that is being said right now, do you think that they genuinely believe that? I mean, these are the people that are preaching that everybody in a diverse society should be together and everybody should be respected and the rights of minorities should be respected and so on and so forth. I mean, why then are they causing they using these terms to cause? Are they causing division by these terms that they're using?
I think they absolutely are, and I think that they're trying to say, okay, if you are elderly or of a certain age, and if you are a white heterosexual male, then you have sufficient privilege already. So why don't you pass on some of your white privilege? Is a term that's used incessantly for white privilege. And I know there are an awful lot of white people in this country, guys. They're not all privileged. I can absolutely assure you of that. So, it's a lazy stereotype. It's an inaccurate stereotype. It is intended to cause division, and it's intended to stir up unrest and to make it, if you like, as they say, a more level playing field, when it is actually nothing of the sort. It's trying to tilt the balance in favour of what they see as disadvantaged people. And I totally get the idea of equal opportunities, but equal should mean equal. It shouldn't mean unequal, in as much as if you fall into a certain category, you've had far more than your fair share of privilege in the past, therefore get out the way and let somebody else do it. That's not equality. That's division. That's unfairness. So no, yes, I think it is designed to cause unrest among the people who look at that and say, yeah, they're right. I'm not in that category. Therefore, why should I back somebody who is in that category? And that, I think, is what it's all about, John. Yeah.
Yeah. And whenever they talk about it, there's a terminology that they use for the particular type of discrimination that they are using. And in that billboard that I showed you at the start, make no mistake, that is discriminatory. That's exactly what it is under their terms. But the term that they use, and they used it here from whenever they created the so-called peace process here, they called it positive discrimination whenever
Yes.
that they wanted to get, say, the numbers in terms of Catholic Protestant ratio into, say, for example, the RUC that came the PSNI, and then they've used that the world over. And it's an American generated term, this positive discrimination that they're using. Now, one of the things I want to talk about, and I know that we're going to move on to talk about other things in Scotland, and not least that there's a new political party coming in Scotland, and we'll get to that very, very soon. But you see, I've been scratching my head. I've been wondering why that it is that some people would be causing this division in the way that they do. And I think that what we've done is that we've traced it right back to its roots. And its roots is in America. It comes from America. And, unbeknown to me, ever since I've been a child, and I'm now coming 54, that it hasn't really changed. It's been that way from the start. I mean, whenever you take, say, for example, the civil rights marches in America, and what happened is that they spilled to here, and people here, they thought that they would do the same thing. And we all know what happened in Northern Ireland as a result of the so-called civil rights marches. So what I want to do is I want to play a short video clip here from America, from Fox News. And I want to get your commentary, both yourself, David, and yourself also, Pete. So again, whenever we play this video, we'll start at the top of the screen. We'll go this way over to Peter. I will ask you a few questions based on what it is that you see, and then we'll move to David. So just bear with us for a few moments, and we'll get this shared on our screen. So just bear with us for a second.
We are, meaning the Biden administration is, degrading our ability to participate or prevail in those wars. Our defensive capabilities have never been weaker, and that's not an accident. They did it. For example, the Central Intelligence Agency, whatever you think of it, we don't think much, kind of important to our country. certainly well funded. Here's a recent recruiting ad from the CIA.
I am a woman of color. I am a mom. I am a cisgender millennial who's been diagnosed with generalized anxiety disorder. I am intersectional, but my existence is not a box-checking exercise. I am a walking declaration, a woman whose inflection does not rise at the end of her sentences, suggesting that a question has been asked. I used to struggle with imposter syndrome, but at 36, I refuse to internalize misguided patriarchal ideas of what a woman can or should be.
Oh, you're intersectional with a generalized anxiety disorder? Come work in a critical federal agency. So if you're running an ad like that, not only are you not serious, you are trying to degrade and hurt the ability of the United States to defend itself, to perpetuate itself, to remain the United States for our grandchildren. That's exactly what, let's stop lying about it. That's exactly what you're doing. And it's not just happening at CIA. Nothing Joe Biden has done in the last year and a half has made our armed forces better prepared to fight wars. Instead, it has been one calculated humiliation after another for the U.S. armed forces. Vax mandates, anti-white ideology, sex changes, drag shows. Whatever is necessary to telegraph to the United States military, you are worthless, you are defending a country that does not deserve to be defended, your traditions are disgusting, you're terrible. That's the message. Here's the latest. The VA has decided to desecrate military cemeteries. That'd be America's last remaining national shrine, our military cemeteries, desecrated with industrial wind turbines.
So again, it's very, very hard to understand whenever you see the new recruits to the CIA. I mean, openly telling people that they've got mental illness, and yet they're being accepted into the CIA. The CIA, you know, they're the people that run around this world infiltrating countries. And then you just wonder what's in these people's heads whenever. I'm all for diversity. I'm all for people doing what it is that they want to do. You know, I mean, go be whoever you want to be, fill your boots. But don't interfere in other people's lives, and don't be pushing things down other people's throats. But I mean, that video this morning when I watched it, I nearly fell off my bed. I have to say it. You know, 6:30 this morning when I woke. Peter, over to you. What did you just say there? If you would just like to give us a wee bit of commentary before that we move on.
I thought at first it was a bit of stand-up comedy. But no, I mean, if you think society nowadays, the words it's going about is transgender and misogyny. They're actually creating laws that deal with misogyny, but they don't touch on misandry. And it seems, you know, I'm all for equality and diversity, but why should someone else's human rights supersede mine? Equality is everyone being treated the same. But at the moment, as a white male in the UK, my rights are being superseded by other ones, and that narrative is being pushed forward to. So I become the bad apple in the society.
Peter, but this is positive discrimination against you. This is needed. This is needed in order to make the country a better place, a more diverse place. Over to you, David. Just give us your thoughts on what it is that you just seen.
It is like a parody. I mean, the woman's saying, I'm a cis female, okay, which is a term I detest anyway. She's talking about her anxiety disorder. And then she said, intersectional. I could barely, I would struggle to even come up with a meaningful definition of what intersectional means. So whatever point she's trying to make there is lost on me. I guess she's trying to say, this is who I am, and I'm not going to let my condition define me. Therefore, I'm joining an incredibly tough organization with an arduous workload, and I'm an clever. So, okay, but I mean, well, I think the host was quite right. So you're going to join the CIA because you've got mental illness. That sounds like a good idea. Yeah, okay. Well, yeah, again, diversity for sure. Nobody should be discriminated against on the basis of any conditions they have completely. Is it appropriate, or is it in any way helpful to the job you're seeking? I would have suggested not. But that being said, if she's doing it as a flag bearer to say, look, I'm going to be a positive example to people who are in my position, that's great. But if she's just saying, this is who I am, this is what I am, and I don't care what you think, and I demand this job because how dare you keep me and deprive me of it just because of my condition and my beliefs. Well, I don't really care what your beliefs are. I don't care really, and neither should your employer. So I would very much hope that there hasn't been positive vetting or positive discrimination in terms of selecting that young woman for this role. So again, it's up to their employers. I couldn't really care less what she does for a living and who they choose. But I find all this trumpeting of people's beliefs and what do you call them, pronouns, it just completely turns me off. Every time I see that these are my pronouns, who are you kidding, guys? You know, as far as I'm concerned, my pronouns are who, me. That's it. That's all you're going to get from me. So you know, there are two pronouns for you. So you can use them whenever you talk to me. So there you go. But no, I thought that was utterly appalling, Peter. That was dreadful, John. Awful.
Yeah, so before we move on to Scotland, just to try to understand why that it is that right around the United Kingdom, even if you look into Ireland right now, France, Germany, Italy, right across the Western world, we are subjected to a thing called American-driven liberal hegemony. And how it was put whenever you look at the lectures from the professors from America, and these are the people that see it in exactly the way that we do. Well, one professor would have said that it's America trying to make the world in their image. And, you know, from ever since I've been a young man, you know, sometimes the things that come out of America, well, they said, you know, that it would reach here maybe 10 years later. Nowadays, it seems to, with the internet and, you know, the way things go, you know, it starts in America perhaps last week and it ends up here this week. And there's no, I'm going to say there's plenty of takers to push this American-driven liberal hegemony. And whenever you look at what's happening in America with reference, say, for example, you know, in schools right now, it started off in America where they're teaching the kindergarten folk in schools. They're teaching them, you know, they're trying to tease out their sexual preferences at the age of perhaps 4 going forward. They're trying to understand whether these children, imagine, would be perhaps transgender, or maybe they were gay or whatever. And if they can see any glimmer of any of those things happening, well, what they're trying to do is they're trying to enhance it, and they're trying to bring it out, and they're trying to make it blossom. And these are kids, remember. These are kids. So whenever I talk about that, guys, no doubt you will have seen the same things in schools in Scotland. But where it actually did start was in America. And, you know, I used to see America as an amazing ally for the people of the United Kingdom, the people of the Western world. But whenever it is affecting us in this way, you know, I look at some of the bunkers that comes from that place. And if we never accepted another thing coming from America, including the wars, including those wars, including the cost of living crisis, including the recessions and everything that goes with it, if we never had another thing coming across that Atlantic, well, I would say that's the way things should be. But unfortunately, there are people within our own politics, the Westminster politics, people within the Northern Ireland politics, people within the Holyrood politics, and even in Wales and right across the Western world, who are seeking to put their feet under this globalist table. And that's no matter what the cost to our countries, no matter what the cost to our people, no matter what the cost to our children, and no matter what the cost to the fabric of society in general. So again, American-driven liberal hegemony is what it's called. And as one professor put it, it is making the world in America's image. And the rationale for doing so is that they say that if everyone was a liberal and everyone had the same thought processes, well, it's unlikely that people across the world would fight with each other. But there's one thing, or there's perhaps a couple of things that they didn't understand whenever they were trying to push this American-driven liberal hegemony, you know, making the world in America's image. Well, not everybody thinks the same as Americans. Not everybody is as bonkers as some of the thought processes that come from America. And well, some of us folk are actually ordinary folk, and some of us actually want to see the fabric of society remaining as it was whenever we grew up. The type of things that our mothers and our fathers and our parents and our grandparents would have taught to us. And it's a better way. The tried and tested way is the way of well, our mothers, our fathers, our grandparents, and everyone that we really came from. So there you go. There's a little lesson as to why that it happens. And Peter, I just want you to just give me really your knowledge on what it is that's happening in schools in Scotland at the minute. And Peter, or then David will move on to you. So over to you, Peter.
Yeah, well, we have that whole transgender issue being pushed at the moment, but things are a little bit more serious than that, where a child can identify as being transgender at school and be allowed to be that opposite gender whilst in school, and then when they go home again, they could just be themselves again, and the school will not advise the parents of this. We also have a clinic where kids as young as 11 can go and receive puberty blocking drugs as they're growing up. And there was a High Court ruling in England came out saying that kids under the age of 16 cannot form an opinion or make up or give consent on that basis. But Nicola Sturgeon clearly stated it does not affect Scotland, and that is still happening at the moment. But yeah, we've got sex surveys handed out to school kids in Scotland trying to find out about their sexual preferences and their sexual conduct and things like that. And it's virginal and disgusting, the things that's happening in Scotland at the moment that they're getting away with here.
And over to you, David. If you would just like to give us your thoughts or your knowledge on what it is that's happening in schools and your opinion on it.
And he's quite right in what he said. This Gender Recognition Act has been pushed through, and the impact of school children is potentially devastating. It appears school children are being encouraged to say that, oh yeah, I identify as gay, for example. And a neighbour of mine who's involved in politics, she has children at school, and they were told, you know, if you say that you're gay, you will get additional merit points just for saying that you're gay. Why? What are you going to reward somebody for saying that they're gay? I mean, a child, utterly ludicrous. But this whole idea of you can don't assume the gender which you've been assigned at birth. This is how people talk these days in Scotland. Assigned gender. You're not assigned your gender at birth. You've either got one set of genitalia or another, guys. It's really quite straightforward, I promise you. You know, and behind that you've got, you know, chromosomes, and these aren't really arguable facts here, guys. These are biological facts. So our little group, the All for Unity group, my colleague Niall Fraser has done a lot of work on this, a lot of very emotive stuff on this, where he's burned his school biology book saying we might as well get rid of this because it doesn't apply anymore according to the SNP. Dreadful. And what's even worse, Pete touched on it there, the sex survey. We call it John Swinney's child pornographic sex survey, in which children as young as 14 were asked, how in the last year, how often have you had sex? That is vaginal sex, anal sex, or oral sex. Anal sex. They're asking 14-year-old children, have you had anal sex? I mean, this is just unbelievable. These people are pornographers. They are paedophiles. That's what that is. It's nothing more, nothing less. Asking a child if you've had sex, none of your damned business. Don't ask me again, because it's got nothing to do with you, school teacher. You cannot have the school, the state, imposing on family life in this way. You can't do it. You know, if they're concerned about child pregnancies or whatever, talk to the parents. Don't talk to the children, because you've got to start in the home. You can't do this in the school. You can't have schools going behind parents' backs indoctrinating children. That's worse than anything the Nazis even did. Even they didn't stoop that low. Utterly. I mean, it's nauseating in the extreme. And you should see the guide that went out originally. There is a guide to anal sex, which shows a banana being dipped in Nutella. I'm not joking. This is from the Scottish government. You think, are these people sick? I mean, this isn't remotely educational. It's just absolute filth. Don't ever dare talk to my children or our children about these matters. Stay out of it. You've absolutely no right going down this path, whatever. It's something that we feel so strongly about, and that's why we're proposing to, or at least discussing doing what you referred to a little earlier, John. So we'll come on to that, I'm sure. But yeah, that would be chief among the policies which we would reject and fight tooth and nail.
There used to be a law in the United Kingdom. The law probably still does exist. And I just had a wee look at it there, but isn't it unlawful carnal knowledge was the terminology that was used for it. And the very fact that these teachers are able to ask that an underage child, anybody under the age of 16, if they were to ask them and if they were to gain that information, well, in my honest opinion, that is unlawful carnal knowledge of a minor. Is how it used to be framed, and as you say, yeah, it is. Well, you know, what's to stop maybe people that would have an interest in children for the wrong reasons? What's to stop those people from using that information for their own perverse ideas? Let's just say. So yeah, so it's unbelievable the way that things happen. So moving on, and we do want to come to the situation and where that we try to understand what it is that's happening in Scotland right now, and we kind of want to try to chart the course of you know, there's been elections for the various the last couple of elections. The SNP they have gained the power, and they've gained it for whatever reason, and no doubt we'll come to that. And there has been a few attempts actually to try to politically defeat the SNP to no avail. But what we're here to do this evening is we're here to announce that there's going to be another attempt to try to lance this SNP boil in a way that it would, you know, try to rectify the fabric of society from within Scotland today. So, David, I just want to go to you, and then we'll move to Peter, and we'll get some thoughts of Peter. And if you can just chart a history, take as long as you need, and chart a history of the SNP coming to power, the various attempts that has been made against the SNP, the reason why they didn't work, and the thought process behind a new party, which will be announced, that's going to be running in the up-and-coming general election, I would assume. And that would be whenever it comes in a few years' time. So over to you, David, and take as long as you like.
To chart the progress of the SNP, I'll give you the abridged version. The SNP, until probably the 1970s, was seen as a little bit of a joke party by most people in Scotland. They had a very brief rise to prominence when they won a couple of by-elections, notable by-elections in the late 60s and the 70s. Then with the discovery of North Sea oil, the SNP latched onto this slogan, "It's Scotland's oil." And this was the idea that because these oil fields are, you know, loosely speaking, off the coast of Scotland, partly between northeast Scotland and Norway, that Scotland should have, you know, sole rights to them. Then they became a little bit more prominent. So in the early 70s, particularly in 1974 general election, they got much more seats than ever before. They actually won 11 seats in the, or 12 seats, 11 or 12, it was 11. In the first general election in 74, then they fell away a bit in the later election, because there were two elections that year. Fast forward into the 1990s, the late 1990s, and you've got the devolution referendum in Scotland. In 1997, there was a referendum saying, do you want Scotland to have a devolved parliament? And it was pretty much overwhelmingly backed. It was seen as the settled will of the Scottish people. And the Labour Party in Scotland brought it in. They brought it in to try and, if you like, stave off the threat of nationalism and the idea that they might try and break up the UK by seeking independence. That was in 97. The Parliament started in 99. Labour won it at first, and Labour won the first two terms. And by 2007, the Labour Party was starting to get a little bit stale, and their leader, Jack McConnell, wasn't seen as being particularly effective or talented. And so in the 2007 Holyrood elections, the SNP won more seats than any other party, and they formed an administration with the Liberal Democrats, I think, from memory. Anyway, fast forward to the next election, and they won a majority. I think it's the first time it had ever happened. And when that happened, David Cameron, to try and stave it off, any more talk about independence, he said, okay, well, we'll give you a referendum, seeing as you've won a majority in Holyrood. Yeah, we'll give you a referendum. So they had this referendum in 2014, the 700th anniversary of the Battle of Bannockburn, which is all these people ever talk about commemorating. We get hard enough time in the loyalist community for commemorating a battle in the 17th century. They go 370 years further back, guys. So I mean, that's how ridiculous it is. Anyway, so they lost the referendum, thank goodness. But then straight after that, they won a massive majority of the seats in Westminster. Because, of course, Scotland, in addition to having its own parliament, since 59 MPs down to Westminster, and the SNP won 56 of those 59. So it was almost like the Scottish electorate saying, yeah, okay, we're not going to get independence, but we're still going to vote SNP, we haven't gone away and all this nonsense. And they've kept agitating for another referendum ever since, particularly after the 2016 Brexit referendum, where Scotland voted for the UK to remain in the EU, but the rest of the UK, apart from, Northern Ireland, voted to leave, and so Scotland left as part of the UK, and they were dragged kicking and screaming out, along with most of the pro-Remain MPs in Westminster, because most of the MPs were pro-Remain, let's be honest. We then went on to the election in 2017, where the SNP lost a lot of those 56 seats in Westminster. Well, it's when Liz Truss, that's when Liz Truss, not Liz Truss, what's her name? Theresa May was the sitting Prime Minister. She called an election to try and get a bigger majority. It failed, but the SNP lost a lot of seats because Labour was quite strong. In 2019, Boris Johnson then stood, and the SNP won a lot of the seats back. So as of now, they hold 48 seats out of 59 in Westminster. In 2021, last year, when I stood, we tried to stop the SNP getting a majority in Holyrood by trying to, game the system the same way I described the Scottish Greens do it. But of course, the pro-UK electorate in Scotland took fright and thought, oh no, we'll just stick to the devil we know. We'll just vote Conservative and Labour, or Labour and Conservative. And you just think, oh, you idiots, honestly. It was explained in great detail how it benefits the pro-UK cause by voting a certain way, but they just wouldn't do it in big enough numbers. So, okay, well, you can take a horse to water and all that, but, anyway, so that's how it was. Fast forward to this year, and you've got the council elections, at which the SNP made some moderate gains. Labour also made some gains, but the SNP's vote share and number of seats grew slightly more than Labour, so effectively the gap between the two grew. The Conservatives lost seats because the Conservatives in Scotland right now are just a sham. They are full of infighting. They're led by a very, very weak individual, a vacillating individual, a guy who was anti-Boris, then he was pro-Boris, then he was anti-Boris, and just ludicrous stuff, awful. So that's where we are right now. Now, we've got a situation where the SNP has said, we demand a referendum because we put it in our, we believe we have a mandate for it, we put it in our manifesto at the 2021 Holyrood elections. Now, think about that. That means they said in the 2021 Scottish elections, a party stood saying, on the premise that they would break up the UK. Well, you can't do that. You can't say we demand to have this reserved course of action, i.e. a referendum, which could potentially break up the UK, when you're standing as a party in a devolved executive. You can't do that. It would be like, as I said recently, it would be like Plaid Cymru winning a majority of seats in Wales and having in their manifesto a pledge to abolish the monarchy, and then Plaid Cymru win a majority of seats, and then the next day they turn up at Buckingham Palace and say, sorry, Your Majesty, but the people of Wales have had a vote and you can't deny democracy, you're going to have to get out. Sorry, that's the end of the monarchy. Ludicrous. That would never happen, obviously. But in the same way, you can't have a devolved executive in Scotland saying, I know what we'll do, we'll break up the UK. No, I tell you what, guys, you won't, okay? So we've got this farcical situation now that the SNP are saying we must have a referendum. The UK government saying you're not getting a referendum. You can ask as many times as you like, you're not getting one because it is not in your power to call for one. You will get one if and when the time is right, and if and when the Scottish electorate chooses, in terms of opinion polls, and in terms of general voting trends, clear voting trends, if it is the overwhelming desire of the Scottish public, then you will be granted it. But right now it's not. And it's clearly not, because all the opinion polls say that it's not. People not only don't want independence, they don't even want a referendum. And that includes SNP voters, because the idea of breaking up the UK now, post-Brexit, post-pandemic, when the nation's GDP has shrunk massively, when our borrowing costs have risen enormously, and you want to be independent now and be outside of the EU and the UK, because they would never get back into the EU, Scotland. Remember, Scotland has never been an EU nation, only the UK has. So there's no way that a devolved region breaking away would ever be deemed acceptable to the EU. So that's not going to happen. The EU wouldn't allow it. Spain wouldn't allow it for a start because it would encourage Basque separatists and the Catalans to do the same thing. Never going to happen. Plus, you've got economic and fiscal or economic measures which you must meet. You cannot have your national deficit as more than a fraction of, I think it's 3% of your GDP. Right now, Scotland's notional deficit is about 28% of its GDP, which has shrunk because of COVID. So it's just a ludicrous trying to do it. So it's not going to happen. So the SNP, knowing this, have said, okay, well, if we can't have a referendum, we will treat the next general election as a de facto referendum. And when they were questioned on this, at first they said, you mean if you win most seats in the Scotland in the Westminster election? And their deputy leader, John Swinney, the child pornography guy, said, oh, yes, that's right. It's just number of seats. And then obviously he was told, John, that's not right. So he immediately corrected himself as the Sturgeon, saying, oh, no, it's not the number of seats. If we win more than 50% of the votes cast, then we'll have won the election, and that will be us saying that's it, we're going to be independents. Now, this is what they're actually saying, and the Greens have said the same thing. They're going to treat these two parties, which is really, as I say, one party split in two, they're going to treat the next general election, the next Westminster election, as a one-line issue. That is, Scotland should be independent. And they claim that if they get more than 50% of the votes cast, then that is a mandate for them to declare independence. Ludicrous, I know. Now, against that, you've got the Scottish Conservatives, the Scottish Labour Party, and the Scottish Liberal Democrats. Now, you would say, I've talked about this in the past about them being pro-UK parties. They are notionally pro-UK in as much as they're not pro-independence, but they're not exactly staunchly, firmly pro-UK. They fight amongst each other. They take votes off each other. Last year, the guy who's now the Scottish Conservative Party chairman, Craig Hoy, stood in East Lothian in the constituency there in Holyrood. Labour held the seat previously with a majority of about 1,100. So Labour stood against the SNP, the Conservatives stood against the SNP, and the Liberal Democrats stood against the SNP. The Liberal Democrats got 1,555 votes. The Conservative guy got 9,000. The Labour guy got 1,100 less than the SNP. But had either of the other two candidates for either of those other two parties stood down and not stood, those votes, had they gone to Labour, would have kept the SNP out. So you've got this farcical situation where these supposedly pro-UK parties who are purportedly on the same side, that is against the SNP, are fighting against each other like bald men fighting over a comb. That's where we are. My contention, and this is what I believe, in their independence referendum, 84% of the Scottish electorate voted. In the last Holyrood election, 63.4% of the Scottish electorate voted. That's the 21% of 4 million. So it's just over 800,000 people didn't bother voting. And they didn't bother voting because they can't identify a party that speaks for them. My contention is somebody has to step into the breach and say, okay, we're the party which is standing to take votes from every other party in Scotland, because I think that's the only way we can stop the SNP. And secondly, it's one way of ensuring, whether the pro-UK parties see it and frame it in those terms, that the SNP are seeing the next election as a de facto referendum. At least if we get a total of more than 50% of the votes cast, then it knocks the SNP out, probably for good. So my belief, and it's just my belief and the belief of some of my compadres, is that a new party will form. I think it will. Of course, Pete and I have been to rallies and discussions about this, and people say, oh, you can't have a new party, that will split the vote. Well, what in the name of God do you think the vote is right now? Yeah. It's hopelessly split. It is interminably split, as the example I just gave you shows.
I would just like to sort of put it in comparison to something that happened here in Northern Ireland, and it's exactly the same thing.
Yeah.
And again, I'm telling you that you're doing the right thing, and regardless of vote being split, it can't go on the way that it's currently going on for the reasons that you actually said. Is that in Northern Ireland, in North Down, there was a man called Alex Easton, who was part of the DUP, who stood against, and Stephen Farry from the Alliance Party stood up against Alex Easton. And, the usual happened with the SDLP, the Sinn Féiners. They got their supporters to vote for Stephen Farry. And the Ulster Unionist Party stood against Alex Easton, and they removed Alex Easton. They robbed him of 4,000 votes, which was enough to take the seat. And Stephen Farry, he's triumphant, and for the last 2 terms, he's been in Westminster. Now, This time around, we're hoping that that doesn't happen. Now, one of the things that happened as a result of this Ulster Unionist Party, DUP, who are getting things horribly wrong, in my honest opinion, and it's the same thing that you're speaking about. I mean, their votes are starting to go down and down and down. Why? Because people are sitting in the house. A lot of people are disconnected, disenfranchised from politics per se. And, you know, the TUV, there was the rise of the TUV in our last assembly election, and the TUV took 65,000 votes, with a lot of the candidates getting more votes than those that are actually current MLAs. But because of the proportional representation that existed, say, for example, Mike Nesbitt from the Ulster Unionist Party, even the current leader of the Ulster Unionist Party, Doug Beattie, it was touching, you know, if he would never have got elected if it wasn't for the transfers that actually happened. There was a man in you know, the area that I live in, a guy called Stephen Cooper, and I think from my recollection, he got 7,000 or 8,000 first preference votes. Mike Nesbitt only got 2,000 first preference votes, and yet with the transfers, he ended up overtaking Stephen Cooper and getting elected. Now, that is an unfair situation. So I'm saying to you is that, you know, you have to make the decision. You have to go for it. You have to, you know, just set your face like flint, as they say, and you have to go for it, because you cannot, you know, have it in a way that it has been happening in the past. So I just wanted to literally compare our politics with yours, and off you go again. I would just like for you to continue now.
No problem at all. Yeah, so my contention is exactly as you're saying. You know, we know that the vote is split. It is absurdly split. The number of constituencies in Scotland last year which returned SNP MPs with substantially less than 50% of the vote, meaning that over 50% of the vote went to pro-UK parties. But in a first past the post system, which is what the constituency vote is in Holyrood, those votes are wasted. If you don't win, you might as well have blown your nose in the ballot paper. That's what it's like. Pardon the disgusting analogy, but it's true. So you're wasting your vote is the point. But, you know, the individual parties have their own, if you like, they have their own ambitions. And their ambition is to feed their own party machineries. And they want us to carry on with this absurd situation where we are keeping these failed candidates in position so that it doesn't really matter so much to them that they don't win the constituencies, but they still get elected into Holyrood via the list, which is the biggest sham of all time. You've got guys who are not just going through the motions of trying to get elected via the constituency, knowing that they'll lose to the SNP, but they don't care because they'll get elected anyway via the second track. And that's why you got all these people last year saying, both votes Tory, don't listen to these guys, all for unity. They're SNP's Nicola's little helpers. In other words, we might have stopped some Conservative MSPs getting elected. And now the Conservative MSPs are elected and they're sitting in completely mute, ineffective opposition every week, cannot land a glove on Nicola Sturgeon, and she's carrying on doing whatever, enacting whatever legislation she likes, such as the Gender Recognition Act, such as the Hate Crimes Act, all this complete undemocratic nonsense. So we won't be deterred here if we decide, and there are a few of us talking about this, and Pete knows who I'm talking about here, certain people who were involved in the election last year and certain people who've stood in council elections. We are talking about doing this. And one thing that I think does work in our favour is Sturgeon herself has backed her party into a corner by saying, oh, yeah, well, we're not, if we don't get a referendum, and she won't, guys, because the Supreme Court is hearing the case and it's going to say, look, you cannot call a vote for a vote on a reserved matter if you're a dissolved executive. And if they don't do that, then there's something seriously wrong with British justice, but I'm certain they will reject it. So she said, okay, it's going to be a de facto referendum and it's going to be all about the number of votes cast. In that case, it doesn't matter if we split the vote, meaning if it gets shared across parties, because it's all about the number of votes cast. She's the one who's made. So she's the one who's handed us this enormous advantage, because most of these people who are not voting right now, let's face it, they're pro-UK. If you were adamant that the UK had to be broken up and you wanted to vote SNP, you go and vote SNP. The people who aren't voting are the ones who don't vote SNP and never would. So those are the people we've got to attract. And as I say, it doesn't matter if they win. It doesn't matter if they win all 59 seats. It doesn't matter, because they've said themselves, it's all about the votes cast. Great. In that case, we'll try to get some of these disenfranchised, which is the very word I use, John. These people are disenfranchised. They genuinely feel they do not have a voice or a vote because they've got nobody who represents them. And that's exactly what we hope to do, with a return to common sense-based politics and enter this GRA nonsense and into this encouraging of sexual thoughts in children and into this complete farce of a hate crimes bill where if somebody is made to feel anxious by something you've done, the police can come to your door. Try getting the police coming to your door if your car's window's been broken. Not a chance. But if you've said a naughty word and made somebody feel anxious, particularly if they are from a protected minority, my God, you would see them fast enough. So that's where we are. And we've got to oppose this because I just finished the podcast before I came on here where I talked about Scotland's drug deaths. The level of drug deaths in Scotland is absolutely terrifying. 4 times as many people have died in Scotland as a result of drug use since devolution. 4 times as many people have died than were killed in the entire Northern Irish Troubles. 4 times as many in 23 years. Drug deaths only, and simply drug deaths. If this was road traffic accidents, you'd have cars taken off the road. See, you cannot go on killing your nation's people because of your drug policies, but that's what the SNP are doing. It's an absolute disgrace. And this is why we're thinking we've got to stop the SNP. Does it matter if they win all the seats? Well, it looks bad, certainly, but people in Scotland have always had this slight protest vote mentality. They always had ever since I've been alive, since the 50s. So they're always going to vote for a party which is the opposite of Westminster. That's what it's going to be. But for God's sake, don't vote for these people because they are incompetence itself and they are literally killing people with their incompetence, and it's got to stop. So something has to change. The tired old mould of Scottish politics has to be broken. It has to, because otherwise, God knows what trouble these people could get us in. We've already seen Sturgeon standing on the steps of Bute House, cuddling Michelle O'Neill, wreathed in smiles. That's not a look that anybody in Scotland wants to see the leader of the Scottish government going down, cuddling the Sinn Féin leader. Good God, woman. Anyway, that's it. Yeah,
it's happening in different places right around the United Kingdom right now. Yeah. And Pete, if I could just ask you, whenever that we talk about the Conservatives in Scotland, whenever we talk about the Labour Party in Scotland, now these are the people in Scotland that should be most tasked to trying to save the Union of the United Kingdom. However, my opinion on those people, whenever we look at the Scotland context, I mean, I think that as far as the Labour Party is concerned, I mean, they couldn't care less if the United Kingdom was broken up tomorrow. They would get on it. In fact, they would just encourage it. And you've seen them doing that with reference to Northern Ireland, and knowing that what's going to happen is that if Northern Ireland is separated continuously as a result of this constitutional changing protocol, well, then the first thing that Nicola Sturgeon will be demanding is exactly the same. And she's already said that, as has Ian Blackford already said that. So what's your thoughts, Peter, on the Conservative Party in Scotland and also the Labour Party in Scotland? I mean, would I be right in saying that the Labour Party would be happy to see the breakup of the United Kingdom? And are the Conservatives perhaps the same? Over to you, Peter.
The Labour Party in Scotland are there's a mixture in amongst them. There's some that have said they would have an independence referendum, and then there's some that have said that they wouldn't. So no one really knows, but we know that they tell you what they think we want them to say at times, so can they be trusted? As for the Conservatives in Scotland, I mean, they have an absolute cheek to call themselves Unionists. There's no aspect of British life ever mentioned in politics in Scotland. It's all Scottish people, new Scots. We never hear about Britain or British. Our flag is called the Butcher's Apron. The Conservatives haven't raised that to be a hate crime issue. Our flag can only fly on certain days of the year. All this has happened under the watch of Scottish Labour and the Tories in Scotland. They're just quite happy to sit there collecting their salary. They have no power whatsoever. I was at a rally last weekend, and the Scottish Conservative rep that was there, MSP that was there, first of all said in the first line of his speech was that he didn't want to be there. So he didn't want to be in a room that was full of unionists, and he didn't want to be there. And he actually says that Holyrood is weak because they have no power. The committees are weak because they don't get the information they need, and they only get a question if their name's pulled out of a ballot. So effectively, they have no power whatsoever. And Sturgeon knows this, and she gets away with everything. But why they can sit in there, anything that happens in Holyrood, these drug deaths, they don't just lie at the feet of the SNP. They lie at the feet of the Lib Dems, Labour and the Tories as well. Because it's those three parties that keep Holyrood going and all these mistakes and deaths happen. My preference would be to close Holyrood. If they ever got a referendum, then there should be a question or it should be an answer. If they lose the next one, we close Holyrood, and I think that should be the way forward.
Yeah, Peter, actually, well said whenever you say that. And also, David, this is to you, but I mean, I think that Pete just made a case for a new party whenever that you hear the way that the Labour Party and the Conservative Party actually are in Scotland. And whenever I look at the the project of devolution, and I see that how that they devolved assemblies, and I know it's a parliament now apparently in Scotland, but I've seen the way that they function. I've seen the way that they do everything to disrupt the workings and the internal workings of the United Kingdom. I just wonder, and then I look at also there's people in Westminster that would be also on their side. I just wonder if if they are actually playing right from Westminster with reference, say, for example, even the Northern Ireland Protocol, the way that they've permitted Northern Ireland to be on the window ledge of the Union, separated from the rest of the United Kingdom, having a border in the Irish Sea, the North Channel, and how that no one seems to want to do anything about it, and how that right now with this protocol bill, they're putting things on the long finger in an effort to get to the point in 2024 where that there's an assembly vote within the Northern Ireland Devolved Assembly, and knowing fine well that there's a conglomerate of what we call the Pan-Nationalist Front. That would be Sinn Féin, that would be the SDLP, that would be the Alliance Party and the Ulster Unionist Party. And that vote they've removed in Northern Ireland, well, under the Belfast Agreement, that these type of votes would have to have cross-community consent. That's the way the Belfast Agreement is drawn. But what they've done is that they've removed the cross-community aspect of that vote in 2024 to allow for the Pan-Nationalist Front to vote the protocol into being forever and a day. And when you look at that protocol bill, and when you understand that it's an enabling bill, and when you understand how long that it's going to take for it to come around, I call it a snakes and ladders bill. It appears to be advancing you, but whenever you think you're getting to the prize, you slip back down that ladder again. Or is it the snake you slip down again and you're back to square one? And that's what they're trying to do. So the Westminster Parliament, now these are Conservatives within the Westminster Parliament who initiated this bill. It's Boris Johnson's bill. It's Liz Truss's bill. And, well, we all understand that Boris Johnson, well, he really wasn't a leaver of the EU. He's a globalist. We see Liz Truss. We understand Liz Truss. Well, let me just tell you her pedigree. She was in the old CND movement. She was a Lib Dem, a Liberal Democrat. And, she also was a Remainer in the EU. Imagine trusting in a Remainer to put right the breakup of the United Kingdom, which is currently underway with Northern Ireland being separated, in the knowledge that knowing that Nicola Sturgeon's going to demand exactly the same. So I question whether that it is that those people that we have tasked to really be, the arbiters of the entire United Kingdom and ensure that we stay together. Well, it's looking like that they have nothing of the sort in mind, David. So over to you, and we would just like to give us your thoughts on the broader picture within the United Kingdom and those that are meant to serve and protect us.
Absolutely right. I share your concerns fully, John. We've seen the Conservative Party with a succession of, frankly, weak leaders who've led us to this situation. David Cameron should never really have given the referendum in 2014, certainly not with all the advantages he gave them, or the alternative. What he could have done, of course, is he could have made it clear, I'm giving you all the advantages, but understand, this is your one chance, and that's it. And he should have enshrined that in law, and he didn't. So, I mean, he did to an extent, in as much as you had the Edinburgh Agreement, you had the Scotland Act, all that stuff. You cannot have another referendum until there's an S30, but it was very weak because ever since then, the SNP's just been laughing at him and saying, no, we're going to have a referendum. We don't care what you think. Give us a referendum. You're denying us democracy and all this nonsense. And they're winning elections because of that, because of the sense of grievance they're instilling in people. The Labour Party has been even weaker, if anything. The Labour Party has been playing games, been playing parlour games ever since 2010 when Gordon Brown won the election. First off, the Unions got Ed Miliband elected when he was easily the weaker of the last three candidates. Secondly, they made the utterly idiotic decision to give the job to Jeremy Corbyn, that IRA supporting Hezbollah backing Marxist, who is barely capable of dressing himself in the morning, never mind being Prime Minister. So, I mean, utterly ludicrous. The Labour Party has not been a plausible party in decades, or certainly since the 2005 election. So now they are so desperate to get the Tories out that they keep being asked, would you do a deal with the SNP? Because this is what killed Miliband's chances in 2010, the idea of him being in Salmon's pocket. And that's what put a lot of Middle England voters off voting Labour at the time. So now they're being asked the same question, and Starmer's saying, no, I certainly wouldn't do with SNP, and I certainly wouldn't give them an independence referendum. And you know what? Not one single person in Scotland believes him. Not one single person believes him. If it comes to next general election and the Conservative Party wins, say, let's say they win 250 seats and Labour wins 270 seats, and Labour, in order to form a majority, an administration, can call on the 55 or 56 people who might win seats for the SNP, would they do a deal with them? In a heartbeat, John. The drop of a hat, they would do a deal with them. Would it mean that Labour would allow them a referendum? You bet your life they would. So people don't trust Labour. Labour is weak on the UK, no question about it, because Labour is just not really the party of the UK. It's fallen completely out of touch with its core base, which is working class people. We saw that in 2019 when a succession of constituencies, all from the to the East Midlands up to the north of England, turned their backs on Labour because they had a dreadful, an utterly appalling leader, and secondly, their policies were just ludicrous, particularly in Brexit. They were saying, well, we're a bit yes and a bit no, so we'll have a referendum. Yeah, guys, just forget it. Meanwhile, over here, you've got guys saying, look, you voted for it, so I'm going to implement it. And that was Johnson. That's why Johnson got in. So we are being very, very badly served by our leaders in Westminster right now. We can't trust Labour. The Conservatives, I think they are slightly more trustworthy, but in Scotland, the Conservative Party is an absolute disgrace right now. It's some of the antics they get up to. I know that there's a guy who's very close to Douglas Ross who acts as what's his name? Is it Malcolm Tucker from The Thick of It? He acts like him. He acts like Alistair Campbell on steroids, and he is not above doing some very, very questionable stuff to try and protect the interest of his boss. And that's what's happening. So this Conservative Party in Scotland is extraordinarily badly led. So yes, we're being let down very badly by these people who are supposedly the gatekeepers of the very institution that they are supposed to serve, which is the United Kingdom, the people of the United Kingdom. So no, we've got no faith in them whatever. So the old politics really is frankly broken, because you've got this situation, this idiotic situation where you've got the main parties. Labour are particularly guilty of this. They think that they've got to attack the Conservative Party in Scotland in order to win. They're ignoring the gorilla on the sofa, which is the fact that the SNP is winning a majority of the seats. In the last Holyrood election, the three parties combined, that's Labour, Conservative and Lib Dems, out of 73 constituency seats, the three parties together won 11. That means the SNP won 62 out of 73 seats. How are you going to beat a party when they're winning 62 seats out of 73? You can't do it. You certainly can't do it when the election is being distilled down to a binary issue, which is, should Scotland be independent, yes or no? And you've got one yes option and three no options, all fighting against each other. A 5-year-old child could tell you you're not going to win that way, but not apparently the Conservative and Labour Party say, no, don't listen to them. They're troublemakers. Vote Labour. We're the only party that can beat the Conservatives the Conservative, what do you mean the SNP? Oh yeah, them as well. Yeah, the SNP as well. And you just think this is pitiful. Honestly, it's pitiful. So yeah, they are being. No parties in the history of UK politics, I would suggest, have deserved their comeuppance more than the Conservative and Labour parties do right now. The Liberal Democrats, I've got to say, are absolutely no better. I spoke about them last week in another podcast. Their senior people keep using this term British nationalist, and they use it to mean anyone who voted for Brexit. That's 17.4 million people, and you're labelling them British nationalists. What a bloody cheek. So the Liberal Democrats, you know what they're like. They're so wishy-washy on everything anyway. The only thing they've ever got aerated about has been tuition fees, which they scrapped in a heartbeat when they got a sniff of power in 2010, Nick Clegg, and then now Brexit. And that's it. That's all they stand for. So the fact that they're using separatist tropes and nationalist tropes to describe people who oppose the breakup of the UK, I've got zero regard for the Lib Dems. I to be honest, they'd be the first party I would target, to be honest, because in Scotland they're an absolute joke. Out of 129 seats, and they stood 129 candidates, they won 4 seats. 4 out of 129. They're a waste of time. So these are the parties who think they are still the 3 parties fighting the good fight like they did in the 1970s. Times have moved on, guys. You're going to get swept aside because you're no longer relevant. And that's all there is to it. So yes, I think it's inevitable that a new party will arise. I do. And I think this time it will be, rather than just yet another small party in amongst a sea of other small parties, the idea will be an umbrella party which will take in the views of all of the small pro-UK parties. But the hook will be, this is all about being pro-UK and fighting the nationalist tide, stemming the nationalist tide, destroying the nationalist threat that threatens to engulf the country. And we've got to stop it. We've got to stop it because these people are capable of anything, as we can see from their record in power right now. So the stakes could not possibly be higher, and we've got to do the right thing. We have to. No choice, John.
Yeah, and is the general election, David, from your recollection, is it the end of 2024?
Has to be called by, I believe, October 2024 or November. It has to be held no later than, I think they can possibly get till January. The likelihood, I mean, I've been hearing this since last year. Oh, an election's going to be this year. I can't see it. If Liz Truss gets a very, very overwhelming mandate of the Conservative Party members, it's just possible that she might call an election to stave off the negative aspect of the recession, which is the worldwide recession, which is almost certainly coming. In fact, it is coming, let's be honest. So she might not want to wait until the recession bites before she says, right, okay, let's have an election. So it's possible that it might be before then. But in any event, it has to be in the next 2.5 years, definitely, yeah.
Yeah, so you really need to get organising, let's just say. And look, I mean, I would certainly encourage you to go for it. I mean, you've nothing to lose, you've everything to gain.
Yep.
And, you know, I mean, again, you start with the highways, the byways, the towns, the cities, the streets, yep, the estates, talking to those people who are disenfranchised, disconnected from politics, and asking them, well, you know, are you going to stand up for yourself or are you not? One of the things that I seen happening in England not too long ago is where that a particular candidate, well, that's what he did. He went around the streets, the estates, and he talked to people, and he did manage to garner himself a lot of support. And I witnessed that personally. So listen, guys, we've came to roughly the end of the screen, and we'll just ask one more question before that it is that we actually close. So again, we're in 2022. We're August, the start of August in 2022.
Yep.
And let's just revisit something we've asked you before. We've asked Pete before. We've asked yourself before, David. Restore UK, the United Kingdom. If you look at that little badge at the top right-hand corner of the screen.
Yep.
You know, in the true video type fashion where the rewind button would have happened, there's 2 little rewind arrows there. And if you were to rewind to restore anything within the United Kingdom, we'll start with David and we'll move to Pete. What is it that you would want to restore, given that you've seen what it is that's happened over, let's say, just even the past year? David, what would you like to restore within the United Kingdom today?
But I wouldn't go all that far back, to be honest. I would go back to the days of my, some people would say it's a long way back, but the days of my adolescence, maybe, because right up until then, there was the traditional sense in Britain of decency, of fair play, of an innate goodness in being British. And a lot of that, I think, was part of the post-war age, if you like. I think that the greatest generation, as they call them, of which my father and uncles were a part and played a big part, in fact. That's what made Britain. It practically bankrupted us, but it made us a great nation again. We stood tall against the tyranny of genocidal fascism, and we faced it down when we were practically alone. Now, the pride that gave this country, I think, was immense. And you've had naysayers and sneerers ever since, poking fun at the people who stood so tall and so bravely and who sacrificed so much. But I still believe in those traditions very much. And this is not me being corny. I absolutely mean what I say. I think it has been a shining example of a genuinely good country. I think we are often berated in this country for being whatever, racist and xenophobic. Utter nonsense. Try traveling around Europe. Try traveling to Eastern Europe. You want to see racism? My God. So look at the scenes that you'll see in football grounds in certain countries in Eastern Europe, booing black people, that sort of stuff that would not be tolerated for 5 seconds in this country. So I think we have great attributes, and I think we have to be no longer ashamed of publicising those and saying, this is what we are. We are British. We're not British nationalists. We're just British patriots. There's a huge difference between patriotism and nationalism. I reject nationalism in all its traits entirely, which is what you see in the SNP and it's what you see in Sinn Féin. I reject it utterly. Whereas what you see in the UK is a broad sense of equality and all the rest of it. And that's what you see. And this is the genuine goodness of being British, and that's what I want to restore. That's what I want. I genuinely do. I mean that. I may sound a little old-fashioned, and I'm sure there will be people listening saying, he's just a British nationalist. Call me whatever you like. I know what I am, and so do you, deep down. So that's what I'd like to bring back, John.
Well done, David. The tried and tested ways. So, Peter, this is something I haven't asked you in a while, but is there anything today, having even crossed this year from the start of the year to now, that you're looking at that you would like to restore? Over to you, Peter.
Yeah, the British identity in Scotland, and also a new political opening that takes that sense of identity along with it and leaves no one behind within our community.
Very, very, very well done, Peter. So to the people on the live chat, I want to thank the guys for coming along, and I would like for you to leave messages in the live chat, and just really to announce is that we're going to restore UK in Scotland once a week, perhaps from next week going forward. You'll see David and Peter on your screen quite a lot, and no doubt the people that they know and that they can bring to the channel. And we really need to redouble our efforts, not just here in Scotland, also in England and in Wales and right around the United Kingdom, where people stand together. Because whenever people stand together, well, together we are stronger. And that's the whole ethos of the United Kingdom. United we stand, divided we most definitely fall. So guys, what I want to do is I just want for you is not to really go anywhere. But what I want to do is that I'm going to drop you down here into the background. And I just want to have 5 minutes on Northern Ireland before that we close. And then we'll play us out with a few songs, because there's a few things that I need to say with reference Northern Ireland, and I'll not be back here again for another few days. So once again, thanks very much for coming along. They are great things to restore. Whenever I drop the both of you down, I'm going to also give my penny's worth in terms of what it is that I would like to see restored within the United Kingdom. So dropping you down, but don't go anywhere, as I'd like to have a wee chat with you in a few minutes in the green room, or is it the orange room? I think it's the orange room. Speak to you shortly, lads. Thanks. So there we go, people. There was David. David's really going to be working with others to form another political party. Peter also will be giving the guys a hand, and they did actually stand in the general election in Scotland previously. And they know their way around politics, let's just say, in Scotland, and let's hope that they have every success. And my honest belief is that they really need to be starting now. Whenever that we talk about Restore, Restore UK, there's a thing that I would love to see restored to every single individual that loves the United Kingdom. And that is a sense of patriotism, a love for country, a love for family, a love for people from within the community that want to see the United Kingdom working and working for the benefit of every single person that lives in this United Kingdom. We understand that there are people that has come to the United Kingdom that wants to make the United Kingdom their home. They're not all here as economic migrants. There's a lot of people that does want to see the United Kingdom flourishing. However, there are those that want to see the destruction of the entire United Kingdom, and we need to restore the sense of patriotism, and where that we should be flying our Union flag. We should be looking at every single thing that made the United Kingdom, and we should be putting that on a pedestal. We should be teaching that in the schools to our children. Let's dispense with this sexualization of our children, and let's teach our children how great the United Kingdom is and what the United Kingdom is all about. England, Scotland, Wales, and Northern Ireland standing together for the benefit of every single person that wants to call themselves British and wants to live here and wants to see, the United Kingdom flourishing from here going forward. So that's what I would like to restore from within the United Kingdom. Now, I did want to have a chat to people with reference what it is that's happening in Northern Ireland. And what I want to start by doing here is I want to play a short video clip. And I mean, this is a real short video clip. It's only a few minutes. And I want people to pay attention to the words on this video clip. And I really want for people to, in their own mind's eye, to assess the words of the leader of Northern Ireland. Whenever that he was caught out, whenever that he had mentioned something, and a sharp radio presenter, he asked him what exactly that he meant. And let's just listen to Jeffrey Donaldson as he digs himself into a bigger hole than he got himself into in the very first place. And why is it that Jeffrey finds himself in a hole? Why is it that he's satisfying absolutely no one at the minute? Well, you see, you can't be all things to everybody. And I believe that that's what the DUP are trying to be. And this is why the DUP have themselves in this cul-de-sac. Well, let's listen to Jeffrey. We'll come back. We'll talk about it for a short while, and then we'll be closing our screen. So listen very carefully as Mr. Lonely, Jeffrey Donaldson, says that, when you're expected to do something, when people in Westminster are expecting you to do something, it can be a very lonely place. And it can be a very lonely place. Why? That's because that, he understands that what he would be doing by pushing on and agreeing to certain things is that he would be working contrary to that which would ensure that Northern Ireland would remain part of the United Kingdom. And by extension, he would be working contrary to the entire United Kingdom. Let's make no mistake about it. Northern Ireland is the front, the battlefront in the fight against to ensure that the United Kingdom it would remain. And people in Northern Ireland, we're the frontline soldiers. Jeffrey Donaldson, he's certainly not my general, or he's not acting as a general. But when you take it that he is the leader of unionism here in Northern Ireland, effectively, he has the weight of the existence of the United Kingdom upon his shoulders. And he's not doing a very good job of ensuring that we would win this war. Let's just listen to Jeffrey. We'll come back and we'll talk some more.
Mentioned within this interview this morning that you're a year into your leadership, Sir Jeffrey, and I just noted in my mind that you said it can be a lonely place. Are you feeling lonely in year one of your leadership? What did you mean by that?
No, I certainly don't feel lonely. I've got the support of a great team within my party. But I mean, at times, even there are moments in leadership when you've crucial decisions to take. And it's in those moments that perhaps you feel as people are waiting on you to take that decision, it can feel like quite a lonely place, even though you've got lots of advisors, people who will help you make.
Does lonely mean scary? Is that what you mean? I'm not trying to trick you here. I mean, what do you mean by that?
I think I mean daunting. Recognizing the huge responsibility that rests on your shoulders to get things right. And in truth, I'm sure there's no leader that would ever say they always got everything right. It's the sense of responsibility, Stephen, that ultimately, despite the fact you've got a party behind you, you've got lots of people around you, that in the eyes of the public, you're the focus.
And
you're the person.
When you're talking about a daunting decision, like I'm thinking about your first year, the major decision you've made is pulling down the assembly. Is that the daunting decision you're talking about? What is it you're talking about?
Well, of course, we didn't pull down the assembly. We went through the deputy first minister, which meant the executive couldn't function fully. Yes.
Yeah, forgotten. Oh, how I wonder, how is it I fail? Now I'm a soldier, a lonely soldier, away from home, through no wish of my home. That's why I'm lonely. I'm Mr. Lonely. I wish that I could go back home.
So there you'll have heard it, that Jeffrey Donaldson finds himself in a very, very lonely place. And why is it that Jeffrey would find himself in a lonely place? Well, that's because that he knows that he is being expected to do the wrong thing. I mean, they're promoting this protocol bill that Liz Truss would have delivered the detail of in the Parliament. And they're promoting this protocol bill as the means by which Northern Ireland unionism could be satisfied, absolutely satisfied. And, well, having the United Kingdom reinstated again by having Northern Ireland being once again members of the United Kingdom and not being outside of the United Kingdom. Well, that's how they're selling it. However, when we look at the detail of the protocol bill, it is nothing of the sort. But yet the DUP are promoting this bill as the means by which that everything would be okay. They know, they're not stupid. They know that they're bluffing you, that they're bluffing me, that they're bluffing every single unionist here in Northern Ireland. And why are they doing this? They're doing this to give themselves an easy ride. They're in for a rough ride in the media, and they're already getting it today. The Northern Ireland Assembly was recalled, and it was recalled because that they're as a stunt to put pressure on the DUP, given that, well, others say that there's a cost of living crisis and the DUP should be in Stormont making good that cost of living crisis when, well, we all know that if the DUP and Sinn Féin and the rest of them were in the devolved assembly, it would have absolutely no bearing on the cost of living crisis. It would have no bearing on the cost of fuel. It would have absolutely no bearing on the heating crisis that there is right now, and where that lots of people right across the Western world are being charged extreme amounts of money for that which was, well, it wasn't that expensive just a few years ago, just even a few short months ago. So whenever that we try to understand why the DUP are promoting this protocol bill as the greatest thing since sliced bread, we can only, imagine that what they're trying to do is they're trying to give themselves an easy ride in the media at the expense of not only Northern Ireland, not only Northern Ireland's place within the United Kingdom, but by extension, the entire United Kingdom could actually break up as a result of this constitutional changing protocol. There's a simple solution, that those that claim they want that assembly back, well, they should be fighting hard to remove that protocol. Why is it that Northern Ireland has to have a border between England, Scotland and Wales and Northern Ireland, a regulatory and a customs border? Why is it that we have to have that? But yet they say, according to the Belfast Agreement, there could be no border between Northern Ireland and the Republic of Ireland. We won the referendum and we are penalised with a border, and the DUP, wait for it, they are happy to keep that border in place. What is being proposed under the protocol bill? And we have to keep driving this home. Well, there's a border that is being moved right now, and it's been moved permanently from where it is between Northern Ireland and the Republic of Ireland. And in Jeffrey Donaldson's words, well, he says that sometimes leaders have to push boundaries, but the only boundaries that Jeffrey Donaldson is pushing is the boundaries between Northern Ireland and the Republic of Ireland. And he is pushing those boundaries to Larne, to Belfast and to Warrenpoint, in where that there's going to be green lanes with trusted trader schemes, with regulatory and customs checks carried out by the British government, with information going to the EU, with the EU looking oversight over the goods that's coming within the UK internal market. And then we have a red lane where Mr. Poots of the DUP, well, he's going to keep his Poots posts in place in Larne and Belfast and in Warrenpoint. And he has offered, the DUP have offered, to check the EU goods coming to Northern Ireland and that are destined for the EU single market. Now, I'm going to say this, and we have to keep driving this home. If it looks like a border, if it checks like a border, if it has regulatory and customs checks just like a border, well, then it is a border. And the real question is this: why are the DUP accepting a border between England, Scotland and Wales and Northern Ireland? Why are they prepared to sign up to this protocol bill? That's a real question. Why? What have they been promised? That border is detrimental to not only Northern Ireland, but it's most definitely detrimental to the entire United Kingdom. In that little picture that you see in front of you, and I'm about to close the screen, how long before Jeffrey or Emma takes their place? There's an IRA puppet master, and we know that the IRA have been manipulating the building behind you ever since the days that they took hold of power from within that building. And we see Michelle O'Neill being puppeted by the IRA Army Council, and we see a little box there on the right-hand side which says that reserved for Jeffrey Donaldson. What you'll note is you'll note a green, white and gold crocodile, which is sitting below with its mouth wide open in order to consume Northern Ireland, Northern Ireland's place within the United Kingdom, which will put in place the destruction of the entire United Kingdom. And what for? All so that the DUP don't have to take the flak in the media. When you can't rely on your politicians to fight for your survival in a meaningful, proactive way, how then can you survive? The truth of the matter is, well, you can't. That's unless that ordinary people from within Northern Ireland, that's unless that we take that fight for ourselves. I'm up for it. I hope you are also. I'm just going to ask people before that we close, and we're going to be playing us out with a couple of patriotic songs as we go. But there's a PayPal link. If you can help our work, you do understand that we are going to the Supreme Court on the 30th of November, 1st of December. The people at Restore, who's advising in the Supreme Court case, we'll be taking a team to London to be there whenever the deliberations would be actually happening. And we expect that there's going to be 2 days of a hearing with reference to constitutional changing EU protocol, and then after which there might be, a month, a few weeks, a couple of months, no one can tell. And then the judge will deliver their verdict. And the legal team, well, on both sides, that's on the side of Jim Allister, Kate Hoey and Ben Habib. Well, their legal team says that they have a good chance of winning, and our legal team says exactly the same thing. So we're hopeful that we are the last line of defense against this constitutional changing protocol that your politicians, that the politicians that we have elected, well, that they have failed to stand up against. How many months? 12 months from 2021 to 2022, and we're now into month 8. So that is coming. We're in the 20th month of the constitutional changing protocol, and still nothing has been done about that protocol, which is really unbelievable. So that's just something for you to understand. If the DUP were serious about removing that protocol, well, they wouldn't be accepting Liz Truss's protocol bill, which effectively ensures that there will be a permanent border between you, England, Scotland and Wales. It's a regulatory and it's a customs border, which has huge detriment for Northern Ireland's position within the United Kingdom. So there we go, people. There we go. That's how it is. If you can help her work, put a few pound into your PayPal link, and no doubt we'll see you real soon. Look, I'd like to thank the guys from Scotland there. I'd like to thank David and Pete for coming along, and you're going to be seeing those two on the channel very, very soon, and in the very, very near future, starting from let's just say next week. And what we'll try to do is we'll try to make the streams actually interesting. We work in the background to ensure that there's a breakup of what it is that we're actually delivering. So people, thanks very much for coming along. Thanks for keeping the numbers strong from across the platforms. The numbers are good. And what we want to do now is that we want to play out with a theme. And this was a cover version of a particular song, and it was covered by a man in England who's a patriot, who's very patriotic, who loves the United Kingdom. And I want you to listen to the words of this song. This is an old song, rehashed, and in a way that, well, you would think that this old song, the words of this song, was written for today. So Mr. Lonely, Jeffrey Donaldson, the IRA are waiting for him in Stormont. The question is, how long will it be before Jeffrey joins them? It's not a question of if he will, it's a question of when. I believe that it's going to come late September, maybe the start of October, and the DUP will cite the reasons is that there's a cost of living crisis and we have to go in to ensure that people are okay. But meanwhile, what does it matter if you are illegally removed from the rest of the United Kingdom? What does it matter if you've had your democracy denied? What does it matter if you have not been afforded the same democracy as people in England, Scotland and Wales, and yet you form part of the 17.4 plus million people that voted in that Brexit referendum? If that's not corruption, well, I don't know what is. Thanks very much for coming along, and we'll see you all again soon. So listen to this song, and well, till next time. Thanks very much for joining us.
I looked outside. What did I see? A little bird. He looked at me. I lured him close. With a piece of bread. And then I smashed. His little head. The moral of the story is. You want some head. You need some bread. Right turn. Huh. I see? What did I see? A little bird. A little bird. He looked at me. He looked at me. I lured him close. I lured him close. With a piece of bread. With a piece of bread. And then I smashed. And then I smashed his little head.